this is not business as usual. 20 million people facing starvation is not something that we are dealing with every day, and therefore we really need to act now. And if we act now, especially in Yemen and in Somalia, famine can be averted. We need to learn the lessons from 2011, where the response was too slow, too little, and 260,000 people died of starvation, more than half of them children under the age of 5. So we really need to act now.
Now that was the Red Cross Director of Operations, Dominic Steelhart, speaking of the urgent need to address the famine affecting large parts of Africa. Welcome back to Talk Africa. Now, a primary cause of the food crisis is ongoing conflict in parts of the continent, and in South Sudan, the UN Refugee Agency UNHCR has expressed fear over the deteriorating security situation. While the violence has forced thousands to flee to Uganda in search of both safety and food. CGTN's Michael Baleke was at the Uganda-South Sudan border, where close to 5,000 refugees are still crowded.
More South Sudan refugees continue to stream in. This is the first time they are passing through this remote border post in the northern Uganda district of Lamo. Joseph Okumu is a former primary school teacher. He is among the thousands that have arrived at this reception center at Ngomoromo.
After 3 days, I went back. I found Mama was there at home. I carried her on a bicycle. I tied her on a bicycle. Then I tied the chair first, then I put her and I tied. Then I pushed the bicycle up to Ngomoromo places.
Like Joseph, many of these new arrivals are from areas that have experienced fresh fighting and famine in recent days. Most of them are women and children under the age of 18.
They're not in the best of conditions. We have the sick people. Last week we had a few, 2 or 3 who were wounded, bullet wounds, gunshots. Of course, they're malnourished, they're hungry, and there's those who need help. We have pregnant mothers, the elderly.
Around 1.5 million people have fled the fighting in the world's youngest nation, and more than 800,000 have escaped to Uganda, a country struggling to cope. After days of fighting in Pajok, 15 kilometers across this border post in South Sudan, more refugees continue to stream into Uganda. But this unprecedented mass influx is placing enormous strain on the country's public resources and local infrastructure. Uganda has continued to maintain open borders. However, the situation is becoming critical, with a call for assistance from the international community.
It's a big humanitarian crisis. Uganda has turned to be the biggest refugee hosting country in Africa, with over 1.3 million refugees. So of course Uganda needs support, and this operation is critically underfunded.
Joseph's family may now be safe from the guns, but his ailing mother is in urgent need of treatment for diabetes and cancer, remedies she's not sure she will receive while in exile. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Ngomoromo, at the Uganda-South Sudan border.
And we continue our discussion now, and I still have my expert guest standing by. In Kampala, Alhaji Jallo, representative for the Food and Agricultural Organization in Uganda, and in Mogadishu, Abdi Ahmed Mohammed, member of the National Drought Response Committee. Abdi Ahmed Mohammed, to you in Somalia, though you did mention some initiatives that the government there and the community is doing to come out of this drought. Very briefly, you are a member of the National Drought Response Committee in Somalia. What are you recommending to the Somali government at this point?
Actually, the committee was formed as a response to the drought situation, and it is a National Drought Response Committee, which is composed of the federal government and the member states and the civil society. So it's actually a national effort to ensure that we respond properly to the drought. We have the National Drought Committee has played two important functions, three important functions. One was to raise the awareness among the Somalis, both in the country and the diaspora, that the situation is really very serious, that we should not wait for the screens in the televisions to be filled with deaths and on the streets, that we should not wait for the famine, and that every sign is there to tell us that it is now that we need to act immediately and properly. The other was to liaise with the international community, the partners that are working on the ground, and they're doing they're trying their best to respond to the needs of the community in the various in the various parts of the country,
right?
And to coordinate with them and to share with them the information that we're receiving from the network of state-level drought response committees that we have. And the third was to really fundraise, and we have started fundraising among the Somalis. We have raised close to 1.4 million. This is the first time that a national committee of that level has embarked on that kind of fundraising, and we hope to within the year to increase the fundraising efforts, so that we reach a target of 20 million that will be raised from the government, the general public, and our diaspora as well.
Right. Alhaji Jallow, to you though, with the efforts though that you've heard from Mogadishu there, and with the efforts of the various regional governments, are governments in the region though getting on top of the drought situation, or is it getting out of hand now?
No, I think they're getting on top of it because, like mentioned earlier, there is a concerted effort among the heads of state in the region. And this region, we're dealing with IGAD, for example. And some of you might remember in 2011, the heads of state had actually put up a declaration. And that declaration was actually to address the drought. And that resulted in a strategy that we call IDRISI, which is the IGAD Drought Disaster Resilience and Sustainable Initiative to improve the response to the drought, and also to improve the systems that are in place. So the improvement in the response can come from the information that you have. And in a country like Uganda, for example, the Office of the Prime Minister has put together what they call a Disaster Response or Emergency Response Coordination Center. And that particular center is now putting all the information together and coming up with at least an analysis of the situation to inform the farmers on time. And there is a lot of investment that has been pledged that can be put into doing things rightly in these countries. And I mentioned the country programming papers and the regional programming papers that will have to address livestock issues, livelihood issues, and other important elements that can really improve the situation in the region. So they are aware of it, and they are working very hard at putting something together. And I think there is a summit that is being planned for June 2017 for heads of state of the IGAD countries, which are 7 countries, Sudan, South Sudan,
right.
Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Somalia, and Djibouti. And I think that summit might also produce a very good action plan, or sort of like a timeline that can produce results at the end of it. Like I said, it's not going to be easy, but then with concerted effort, I think there can be improvement, because it is mentioned that Somalia, the previous drought took them unawares, but this time they were better prepared, even though there are still some hard points to address. But as I mentioned, once these things are done, it will sort of lighten the situation in these countries.
And that's all we have time for this week. But thank you to my guests for their insights. In Kampala, Alhaji Jallow, representative for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations in Uganda. And in Mogadishu, Abdi Ahmed Mohammed, member of the National Drought Response Committee. And remember, you can join the conversation online through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And do join us again next week for more Talk Africa. Goodbye.